Really appreciate it. Well, I'm here today to talk about my favorite thing, which is what happens when we have the pleasure of dealing with 4, soon to be 5 generations showing up across the boardroom table, across the conference table, and of course, across the dinner table, and we have to figure everybody out. And we've been working on this since 1997. We were one of the first to get a book out about all 4 generations, and we're still getting to know them because the generations are constantly evolving and constantly surprising us. We don't claim to have all the answers. We still bump into our own generation gaps on a regular basis. I'll tell you one that happened to me not that long ago. We were trying to hire an office manager for our Minneapolis office. Shouldn't be that hard, but for some reason it dragged on and on. And finally, I got a call from my business partner, and he said, "Hey, Lynn, I think we found a good candidate. She's a little bit young, but I think she's got all the right qualifications. I think she'll be perfect. You're going to like her." And I said, "Great, why aren't we hiring her?" And he said, "Well, I just wanted to give you a little heads up." Right? Never a great thing. So I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "Well, the front part of her hair right here is dyed bright blue." All right, fine. I said, small company, we have like 9 people, not a big deal. Go ahead and make her the offer. So later that day, my mom called. My mom's from St. Paul, Minnesota, and she sounds like it. So when my mom calls, she invariably says, "Oh, hi there, how are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, what's up, Mom?" And she said, "Oh, I was just checking in to see how you're doing hiring that new office manager then. How's that going?" As an aside, she heard me speak a few weeks ago, and she came up to me afterwards, and she goes, "I do not talk like that." You kind of do. So I said, "Okay, well, it's good news, Mom, because we actually found a really great person to hire for office manager, but I got to tell you, she has a little bit of blue hair." First words out of her mouth, "Oh, I'm so glad you're willing to hire older people." Okay, that completely makes me happy because that is so my mom, right? 81, interested in everything, so engaged with the business and up on things. But I also love that story because that's kind of our world, right? It's whether it's what you look like when you show up at work, or whether it's what you mean when you say something like blue hair, or whether it's some of those deeper issues like loyalty and work ethic and etiquette and work rules and communication. There's a lot going on with the generations, and it can be painful. Not going to pull any punches on that one, but it can also be fun. And although I'm going to talk about what some of the big trends are, what are leaders grappling with, and what are some things that leading-edge companies are doing to bridge the gaps, I think as we look at the gaps, I want all of us to keep in mind that when you interview people about what they want at work, what really gets people engaged, they say the same thing. They want to work someplace they care about, they want to do great work, and they want to be able to have fun and collaboration with the people they work with, like I think the 2 people do so well in this commercial.
Stuart, can I see you in my office, please?
That kid is sick. Hinge is squeaky. Very sick.
Stuart, get in here.
Sure thing, Mr. P.
Stuart, I just opened my Ameritrade account.
Let's light this candle.
Let's go to Ameritrade.com. It's easier than falling in love. What do you feel like buying today, Mr. P?
Kmart.
So research it. All this stuff is provided for you free of charge.
No cost.
Yeah, that's synonymous with free.
Looks like a good stock.
Let's buy.
Let's buy 100 shares.
All right, click it in there.
Okay.
How about 500?
100, Stuart.
You feel the excitement? You're about to buy a stock.
Okay.
Why?
Oh, fabulous. I'm thrilled. What did that cost me?
$8, my man.
$8?
$8. Riding the wave of the future, my man. I gotta get a soda.
All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. P.
Wait.
Having a party on Saturday night if you really want to go.
I'm going to try and get there. Thank
Happy
you, Stuart.
trading.
Thank you.
Rock on.
All right, Stuart.
Now, I've seen those 2 a million times, and I always get a kick out of watching them, and I see that you do too, and I'm just going to ask you to call it out. What is it we love about watching those 2 people? What is it? The age difference is there, of course. The what? Yeah, they're keeping it real. They're genuine. They get to be themselves around each other. And what? They like each other. They've figured it out. They've got that camaraderie. You can tell they get to have fun together. They have that genuine enjoyment. And I love to show that because I think that's sort of what we're all going for. I mean, they're different, right? Stuart's in his special work outfit. Mr. B's in suit and tie. How many of you at the beginning thought that Stuart was going to get in trouble? Remember that lady? And she says, that kid is sick. How many of you know that lady? You know, when you think about your workplace, how many of you are that lady? I mean, there's that thing that goes on where we want to kind of get at those other generations because they just plain seem different. And my job is to help kind of drop the veil, think a little bit about who the generations are, and then tie that back to what some of the trends are right now with the generations. So best place to start is to get acquainted with how they break down by age. So this is in the U.S. We have our traditionalist generation born prior to the end of World War II, followed by that great big baby boom, biggest population born in U.S. history, about 80 million baby boomers, 1946 to 64. And then in the early 60s, the U.S. population growth rate began to slow, and we ended up with that much smaller population of Gen Xers, only about 60 million compared to 80 million boomers. And then later on, we had kind of that second wave boom, resulting in the millennial generation, or what some call Gen Y. 82 plus million in that Gen Y group, still growing due to immigration. And at the last census, the 2010 census, they actually had topped the baby boomers in size. So millennials, you are now officially the largest, I was going to say the greatest generation, but the largest for sure. And when we look at these generations, the challenge is it kind of just breaks it down by birth years. But there's more to it than that. How many of you feel like you might be right in between two generations? And in your life, you kind of felt like, boy, I've got one foot here, one foot in the other. Just raise your hand. I want to just see. So we've got a lot of people. And I want you to know we actually wrote a chapter about you in our book. We called it Cusper the Friendly Ghost. Because by accident, we started interviewing Cuspers, and what they said to us was, I'm exhausted. I feel like I spend the whole day explaining one generation to the other, mediating, counseling, defining. It's an exhausting job. So I just wanted to acknowledge the Cuspers, because there's a lot going on out there when we find ourselves trying to communicate. And really, age is just the starting place. There's a lot more to it than that. So if we want to think about extraordinary engagement, we kind of need to take it deeper than just the labels and the numbers. And we need to think about what we call generational personalities. And that's the idea that the events and conditions that were happening during your formative years help to form some attitudes and outlooks on life and on the workplace that really shape who you are when you show up at work. And sure, there are many factors that shape an individual, anything from birth order to what part of the country you were born in to how your parents raised you. Those are all factors. This is just one piece, kind of the piece that puts you in a particular place in history. So I always think the best way to learn about somebody else is to start by learning about yourself. So I've got a little challenge for all of you, just to kind of ground yourself in your own generation. On your tables, you've got a handout that summarizes a lot of this, so feel free to take one of those, because I see some of you are taking notes, and you don't have to. It's all in the handout. And then you also have an activity sheet. It's got 4 columns. It's in color. It's got some pictures on it. And what I want you to do is grab that sheet, take a look at it, find your generation on there. Where do you kind of plant yourself? If you want to bump down a generation, that is A-okay with me. Or if you want to slosh back and forth between 2 generations, that's fine too. But I'd love you to find on there a few of the events and conditions that were really influential for you when you were coming of age. And maybe just circle those or put a star by them. If some biggies for you aren't on there, just write them in. We put blanks at the bottom. What are some of the things that shaped the person you became? Just find a few. Again, if yours aren't on there, feel free to write them in.